I'm not a foe of video games, because games are complicated and it isn't clear what people are doing when they're playing them. You know, they may be expanding their cognitive skills. They may be learning to cooperate. They may be learning to engage in complex problem solving. And so, but part of it's also a matter of balance. You know, 50 hours a week, probably not, unless you're going to go pro, right? Because there's other things you need to be attending to. It's not a stable solution for you, your family, your society. It's too one-sided. Yeah, and you can get pulled down rabbit holes of all sorts that are one-sided pursuits of meaning. So, and it's something we're actually going to talk about as the later classes unfold. The question is, how do you stop yourself from falling prey to a pathologized sense of meaning? And I think one of the answers to that is don't lie. Because what you're hoping is that your nervous system is sufficiently healthy and well programmed so that what it reads out to you is reliable. And if you pathologize your psyche by either through sins of omission, let's say, or outright deception, you're going to warp that internal structure and it's not going to read out properly to you. And then your sense of meaning will lead you astray. So like one of the reasons for speaking the truth, I shouldn't say that because you don't know how to speak the truth, but you do know how not to lie. And it's a game you're playing with yourself. You can define the damn lies. No one else has to do that for you. You try not to utter falsehoods because you warp your neurological structure by doing so, and then it will read out pathologically. And then if you rely on it to guide you, it will run you right off a cliff. So that's why there's a moral element to this, is if you're going to rely on your sense of meaning, make sure that you don't pollute the mechanism. See, this is partly why people go to confession, right? Which is like I said, a psychotherapeutic technique. It's like, okay, what stupid, miserable, wretched things did I do this week? Well, that's a good thing to make conscious, right? Because maybe you can not do them the next week. And you think, well, why would you bother? It's like, well, you're in a ship. It's sailing across the stormy seas. If you're hacking holes in it with a pickaxe, you should probably pay attention to that before you sink. So it's a good idea to keep what you're doing that's stupid in mind so that you can stop doing it. And so then you can more and more rely on yourself and your own, your own conscience, let's say, as a guide to proper action. You know, in the Pinocchio story is that the conscience was not an unerring guide for Pinocchio. It had to learn. And so it's also partly pushing yourself into new situations and differentiating yourself so that you get wiser. And so it's courage as well as truth. Those might be the two. There's more. Beauty, courage, truth, the fundamental virtues. Yeah. Why be virtuous? That's the question. It's so that you can bear the suffering of life without becoming corrupt. Right? It's practical. It's practical. There's nothing more practical than that. So, unless you want misery, and people do, it's exciting, misery. You could say that the ultimate sense of meaning is composed of the union of fragmentary senses of meaning, and the fragmentary senses of meaning can be overwhelmingly powerful. Anger, sexual lust, and the sorts of things that you experience when you're playing a video game, which are very carefully calibrated to keep you on the edge of exploration, let's say. The kids who could delay gratification at an early stage were doing quite a bit better later in life. Now, I don't know to what degree that was controlled for IQ, because such things matter. But the point is that, well, the point that you're making, is that you can only delay gratification intelligently, though, if the social structure is stable. Right? Because basically if you delay gratification, you're making a bargain with the potential future. And the bargain is everybody's going to keep acting the same way so that the future is the same as the present. Because otherwise you'll delay gratification and then everything will fall apart and you won't get your cake and you won't get to eat it. And so society has to be quite stable. It has to be stabilized by the contractual relationship between people before delaying gratification is a useful strategy. This is also why you see in chaotic circumstances where the future becomes uncertain, people forego delay of gratification very, very rapidly, and perhaps appropriately so. What happens as you stabilize societies, being conscientious becomes more useful. And so then you're going to be selected for as a consequence of being conscientious, and that's going to stabilize the society even more. These are roughly known as Baldwin effects. So that's where, let's call it a genetic transformation, produces a behavioral transformation that transforms the environment, so the genetic transformation is more likely to propagate. You can get unbelievably rapid evolutionary movements when you get a loop like that developing, and they happen frequently. And that's also how, in some sense, a meme can be turned into a genetic, can manifest itself genetically. So if you have an idea that spreads through the culture and it tilts the culture in a certain way such that those who hold that idea are likely to be more successful, then the meme and the biology will align themselves across time. And well, I think you see that happening. That to some degree, that's what's happened as religious stories have propagated themselves as well. Because as the idea of the hero becomes clearer, so to speak, and then it manifests itself more clearly in the society, then there's more rewards for doing it, then the selection pressures get more positively related to that kind of behavior, and the whole thing loops upwards. So it's something like that.
In terms of treating mental health disorders, where do you think we should draw the line, or how should we draw the line between pharmaceutical interventions and very severe psychotherapy methods? I mean, at what point is depression and anxiety should be treated with medicine, and at what point should it be, is it
Okay, that's a good question. Medical interventions, anything. If you're sick, you do what is necessary to get better, and you leave your pride behind if you have to. And that says nothing about the utility of the behavioral interventions. You want to hit the problem with everything you have at your disposal. But some antidepressants, especially for people whose lives are together and who are depressed, antidepressants can be absolutely miraculous. So, you know, and you hear about the clinical evidence in their favor being iffy, and that's partly because the diagnosis of depression isn't very well formulated. It's very different to have a terrible life than to be depressed. And antidepressants can only help you so much if you have a terrible life. How do you differentiate the utility of behavioral / psychotherapeutic treatments for conditions like depression versus medical treatments? Okay, so the first thing I would say is don't underestimate the utility of medical interventions. Depression is a catastrophe. It carries with it a very high suicide rate. And it also levels people out, and it's really hard on their families. And so, and it's physiologically extraordinarily damaging. And so, if you're in a depressive state and it's severe, you can try an antidepressant. You'll know in a month if it works. If it works, well, maybe it'll help you get your life together. Like we could say, well, maybe you're depressed because your life isn't very well together. Could be. Sometimes people are depressed, their life is just, it isn't fine, because no one's life is fine. Everyone's life is a tragedy. But sometimes people have their lives in order as much as you could expect anyone to have. They have friends, they have an intimate relationship, they have a career that they like. You know, they're qualified, industrious people working hard on what they're doing and really playing a minimum number of games with themselves, and they're terribly depressed. Antidepressant, man, sometimes that will just fix it. And so hooray, like you're a biological entity. If there's something out there that can help you strengthen yourself so that you can prevail, great. And you know, people, you hear, everyone takes antidepressants, you know, everyone's taking them. It's like no one takes those bloody things without serious consideration. Half the time I spend with my clients who are depressed is often the 2 years long attempt to get them to tentatively try an antidepressant, because they're so guilty that they're relying on an external crutch to sort out their lives that they can't even tolerate it. But you know, I say, well look, man, what if you had diabetes? You're not going to take your insulin? It's like you got stressed, you blew out at your weakest point. That's what happens when you get stressed. If there's something out there that might help you, it's like, try it, for God's sake. You'll know in a month, and you just stop if it doesn't work. Now, having said that, you want to do a multidimensional analysis. It's like, well, do you have any friends? Do you have an intimate relationship, or are you pursuing one? Do you have a reasonable career? Are you as educated as you are intelligent? Do you have something useful to do with your time outside of work? Do you have a drug or alcohol problem? Are there other behavioral issues like sleep dysregulation and lack of eating that are contributing to the pathology? You want to differentiate all of that, and wherever you can make a behavioral intervention, so much the better. But sometimes too, you're dealing with people whose lives are so wrecked that they don't even know where to start.